Hello, beautiful souls. Victoria Amador here from Soul Healing Tribe, and today we have Yesenia. Yesenia finished the Awakening the Healer within, I think, last year. And you also did the first DRT training, the Dream Regression Training, and you're in the second one. So I'm super excited to have you here because I want people to be able to get real answers, not just like, oh, this is great, but like, let's get into the meat of the pros and cons, your experience overall, anything that you want to share is going to be an open conversation. And hopefully, those that are listening can benefit from listening to your story. So, welcome, Yesenia.
You.
So, give us a little bit of background about who you are, like whatever you feel like you want to share with the listeners.
Okay, let's see. I've been on a spiritual journey for, no, gosh, I guess since for like over 20 years, I'd say, just trying different things like angel messenger cards or Reiki or meditation, different courses. I teach yoga, I teach meditation, I teach different classes. I'm in the fitness field. So it kind of segued into it when I started doing yoga and things like that. And then it just opened up where I was like, well, I was attuned in Reiki twice and I still didn't feel anything in my hands. I had my two children and I was like, you know what? I really want to be a healer. I want to tap into, I want to be able to manifest. I want to be able to create. I know I'm a healer, but I don't know how or what or why is it not happening. And I just felt there was always something blocking me. And it, I married late in life. I had kids late. So I don't want to say late, but in my late 30s. So I was always, well, when you have children, it's like a game changer and you want to be able to heal them. You want to be able to be there for them and make sure they're okay and they're healthy. So when I saw the Awakening the Healer program, I was like, okay, awesome. Because I've tried a lot of different programs and wasted a lot of money. And I kind of, wish I would have found you first because although my niece, well, she's funny, she's like, because I told her the same thing, and she goes, well, you probably met her right when you were supposed to. So you probably had to go through everything. And I was like, oh, I know you're right. I was like, I know you're right. So, and what drew me to the program was obviously I wanted to awaken the healer within me, but I didn't realize that in order to do that, or in order to tap into that, I had to heal myself. And that was a whole big process and a whole big aha moment for me because I was always, being the mother, being the industry I'm in, it was always helping others. So I was always the last I never put myself first for any of that stuff. So to actually turn it around and look within was like, oh, wow. Oh, okay. That's interesting. That's different. And then my husband was going through his journey. And we had I had taken him to do a ceremony separate from this. And because I thought it would be a great experience for him, he had to release a lot of stuff. He was having a lot of thoughts that were coming up that were just very negative. And I just felt like, wow, you know what? This is something that will help clear things up for you. And it did the exact opposite for him. It ended up it was kind of like opening Pandora's box, because what I found out with you, Victoria, obviously, is unless you have the proper guidance in any ceremony, you're opening things up and you're not closing them, or if you open things up, you're allowing things to come in potentially that don't need to be there, or you're opening things up and instead of gradually healing like you would in like the Awakening the Healer program, it was like busting through with a ram and everything came flooding in, past life, parallel lives, this life, everything. And honestly, if it wasn't for you, he wouldn't be here. And I mean, I'm not saying that to blow smoke up your butt. I mean that in every sense of the way, because it was a lot of emergency calls, like, what do we do? This is what we're going through. He was going through a lot of, it was almost like he was taking sacred plant medicine or doing the healing without having done anything. So it was uncontrollable.
Wow.
Like, and I mean, in retrospect, they were probably panic attacks on top of everything. But
Mm-hmm.
like he said, like he felt like he was dying, and maybe a part of him was like, maybe it was the old part of him that was, but he had to release so much. And like you say, with fragile hands, because he was going through so much that it was intense, and it lasted for a whole year. So
How was that for you? As because I know you were, he wouldn't have made it without you. So what was going on with you when this is happening, and how did you push through to support him through that journey?
I think the hardest part was being a mother. And you know I saw him, and I knew who he is, or who he was. I knew him in a soul level, I guess you can say. So I knew everything he was going through, all the thoughts that were coming up for him, everything that was showing for him was not who he was. And he took every medical exam there was to make sure there was nothing wrong with him. His heart, his he had EEGs, EKGs, he had every test you can imagine. And it was it was when I would come home, I didn't know what to expect. And so it was a lot, and it was being there for the kids. It was constantly reminding him of who he was, because he started studying the brain science, because he's like, well, are these my thoughts, or are these thoughts of someone else? And he's like, okay, this is not schizophrenia, because they don't know and they're not mindful, aware of it. And then I would show him articles of like, look, these are shamans that are psychiatrists, and they say that, you know, it's not people, it's not schizophrenia, it's usually entity attachments or energy work that needs to be released, or past lives, or something that can be healed without having to take medication, or go to see a psychiatrist, or I mean, if that's what you want to do, that's you go and you do that. But like, he wanted to retreat and be by himself. And I was like, the kids were hearing that, and the kids were, it was a hard transition. And I was like, look, it, it was, so my year sessions were a lot of healing that and releasing that, because I needed to be strong to be there as a unit for the kids and for him. And thankfully he made it through. And I know a lot of our calls were like, I broke him, it was my fault. And he said, no, his spirit wouldn't have done it if he wasn't meant to. And that was a big takeaway that I would always remind him of, is that you chose to do this, don't forget. And he would forget. And I know you are strong to do this. You are strong enough to break the bonds and break away from, the childhood trauma, the past lives that you dealt with, everything. Because it's everything that happened like all at once. And it was, I mean, imagine all the healing that you would do over, I don't know how many years, that takes years to heal, and it all comes all at you at once. So I'm grateful for you, because you were able to say, no, he's dealing with a lot, but it's manageable, one step at a time, one step at a time. And just kind of, one layer and one layer, and just, and and I love him for not giving up. I love him for not leaving. I love him for not, for sticking with it and remembering who he is, because we're all spirit, we're all soul energy, and we're all an extension of God, and we're creators, and we're powerful within ourselves. So it was a constant reminder. It was like I was like a motivational speaker. Like,
You
you're
did
not
a
gonna
great
give up
job.
because you're powerful, and you know you are, and you need to stop, for not for me, but for those kids, and you need to cut it out. Suck it up and do it for the work. He's like, I don't want do that. I was like, if it's not with Victoria, then we'll find someone else and we'll do it. But he would always come back. So it was, yeah. And that was me every other day. Or then it became once a week. Then it'll become once every 2 weeks. And then when my son, my oldest son, who's 10, he suffers from headaches, and he has suffered from headaches since he was 1. So when we were doing a lot of the sessions, and then you talked about this, the DRT training, and because I would call you and be like, look, this is the dream he had. What do you think? What am I supposed to do? My gosh. You were like, do the training. And I was like, I don't want to do people throwing up and safer medicine, or you're like, that's not what this is about. That's not what this is about. It has nothing to do with that. This is about dreams and the releasements and healing and doing the work. And I was like, I said, so that's what attracted me initially. It was the whole point of being able to help my children, being able to help my husband. And that's the initial reason why I did it. And then my first client was my son. And it was that he had ETs attached to him. He had reptilians attached to him. He had these entities that were there. He would come to my bed. He had nightmares, and he had nightmares often, and to a point where he was scared of even sleeping in his bed. And his dreams more recently have been about like being killed or being stabbed. And before, and it's funny because right when we had that first, when I did my training and we were practicing, that's when he had a dream about lizards and reptilians and how he wanted to help them because he had raised them since he was little, and how they were all in, he had 2 of them that were on his shoulder that he had raised, and there was a dome, and he wanted to help free them because they were stuck in his dome. So he was fighting them off, all these humans, and he pressed the dome and released them, and all these little lizards came out, and they were all happy, and he felt like empowered, like a hero. And when I heard that, I was like, okay. I said, okay, we can get rid of those. And so we kind of went in there and released what we needed to release. And I called Victoria when I got stuck, and I was like, oh my gosh, what do I do next? But we went back, and and he remembered how he did not want to release them because he felt it was like a mothering, like a father thing, like he was responsible for them. And then he realized afterwards that they were taking his energy. He was very like drained. And then he also remembered that whenever he would get headaches, he would see their face.
And this is not something that you knew before. Like
No,
he never came up
he never
before.
shared this. He's had headaches since he was 1.
Right.
So, and we've done EEGs, we've done brain scans, and nothing was found, thankfully, because we did that when he was 3. And and so that was peace of mind of knowing that. And so I knew it wasn't that. And then when taking the course, I was like, okay, then obviously it was becoming more evident, like, okay, so the dying in the dreams, because he'll wake up screaming and come running into our bed, and we'd be like, okay, what happened, puppy? What happened? Tell us, And then lately it's been more of the dying. And so I'm like, okay, well, this has to be past life or parallel life or something that needs to be regressed. But it's just interesting how when we released a lot of stuff, because he, at that point, when I finished the first training, when we did that session, then when it came up out of the blue, he was getting a lot of nosebleeds also. And in the beginning I was like, well, he's a boy, he picks his nose, but it was happening with the headaches, which also was a red flag for me. And I was
Right, right.
like, okay, this is something more. So
I'm glad that you did the science stuff and prove that there was nothing wrong with the brain, right? Because we sometimes we're like, okay, maybe there is something wrong with the brain, and which can be, right? We
right,
know that. But if there is nothing wrong with the brain, it has to be at an energetic level. So the headaches, the nosebleeds, the nightmares, the everything in between that is causing discomfort, even with a child, as you've been telling us, can be regressed so that we can release them. So before we continue, tell us what happened after you did that session with your son.
he he hasn't had a headache since. So that was back in November. So like for a good 3 months, and he was getting 1 or 2 really bad headaches, only on the right side of his eyebrow. Yeah, 1 or 2 times a month. Sometimes once a month. Sometimes it'll take every 2 months, and then it'll come like as a series. So
Mm.
the fact that he had that relief, he'll have like passing ones, be like, oh, it bothers me a little bit, but but then it'll go away. It wasn't before where he was debilitated, like crying in ball, like, oh my gosh, So the fact that he cleared that, and I'm talking about, we got allergy testing. Like, we exhausted all the options before.
And
But
you guys eat very clean,
yes.
which is also like sometimes it can be gluten allergies or something like that. And
Yeah,
you went through all of that.
we had gotten, he doesn't eat dairy, meat, the gluten we cut out for a while, which is impossible and in the States, but so we just kind of, but we tried cutting out everything and seeing, and it made it less frequent. So, when he was little, we loved Starbucks croissants, and then we were like, okay, wait, it's something maybe it's an ingredient. So we cut that out. And instead of getting them every 2 to 3 weeks, that's when he started getting like once a month or something, or then he would come, but it was no rhyme or reason. It wasn't like, okay, at first I was like, well, maybe he's getting them when he was getting sick, or getting a cold, and because that happened once, and then after that it was like, no, he's not sick, so I don't know where this is coming from. So
So 10 years of headaches, migraines, and even, like you said, debilitating. So affecting his social life,
oh
right?
gosh, yeah, he couldn't go to play sports, which he loves to do. He's on a team, so we had to miss practices, we had to miss sometimes he would have to stay home from school, because I'm not a big proponent of medicine either. But I was giving him, the children's Tylenol, or sometimes the children's Motrin. I found an organic version of it, but it's not, I know that's not good for him, and that's not good for his liver. I didn't want him to be on that for the rest of his life, where he's taking, pain medication, especially since I know that's not good for him. But when you see your son in such extreme pain that there's no relief, you feel helpless.
Yeah.
You feel hopeless. And that's one of the biggest reasons why I did the Awakening the Healer program, because I'm like, man, why can't I feel anything with my hands? Why can't I do Reiki on him and let it go away? Why can't I help my own son? If I can't help my own son, then how am I going to help others? Like, oh, forget me. Like, it was never about me. It was about my children. And so that was a big motivation. And so when DRT came up, I was like, okay, you know what? I will do the course. I wasn't looking to per se become a practitioner or anything like that. If that happens down the road where I can help people, sure. It's something where I'm open for that. Yeah, a lot of it was just because all of this fascinates me. The energetic world that's out there, in the quantum field, is amazing. I know that's where we create. I know that's where we come from, where we live from. It's powerful, and to not know more about it is it's not how I want to raise my children. I want them to be aware of it.
Right. It's almost a little irresponsible if we're not aware, right? Because as you can see with the sessions that you have done for your son and daughter, there is so much that is happening, but we have to be able to get into our subconscious to do the work that we need to do in those
Right.
planes of assistance. So I don't know if we went over the main things that you got out of DRT, or the things that you feel that can be highlighted for someone that may be thinking about doing DRT.
Um, I mean, there's so many things. It's, I think it is a great tool for not just to help others, but for yourself, because you can identify so much more within you. When you're in the course, you're healing also because you have to practice on each other. So you're essentially doing the sessions to for your own growth, for your releasements, for your healing. So what I liked about it is, you know, you are healing, you're tapping into your higher self, you're almost like into your intuition because you need that also. So whether you like it or not, you have to work on it. You have to, you gotta tap into it. And that's something that I've been wanting to work on, as you know, for a while. So this is great in order to tune into that and then to be able to help those around you that may not, you know, it's just, I find it invaluable. I find it invaluable because I see this as a tool to help with my children until they're older. I mean, hopefully they'll allow me to do it. It got to one point where my son was like, "Not again." I was like, "Lay down. We gotta analyze the stream." And then he was holding out information, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, all right, I'm doing it too much, aren't I, Victoria?" She's like, "Yes, you can't do it every week." I was like, "What do you dream about last night?" What did you dream about? So it was, so I had to tone it down. Because I was finding stuff and I was like, "Oh, who else is there? Do you see something there? Do you see energy there? Do you see a shadow? What else was there?" So,
Yeah.
let's get rid of it. Let's get rid of it. So yeah, so I think it's just something that I want to use. Obviously, my children, well, most people, once you become aware of it, you're like, "Holy crap, I have all this stuff that I need healing from, whether it's from this life." I've known about past life regression since I was in my 20s, for over 30 years, but I was never interested in it because I was like, why do I care about past life stuff? If I don't know how to heal it, I don't know what to do with that. I don't know, you know, I did the angel oracle cards and past life will come up and I'm like, okay, and like, what does that have to do with me? Like, how am I supposed to know how to deal with that? So I was like, next, let me put that card back in my let me deal another card because that's not helping me. You know, I didn't see any value in it because I didn't know any better. Because no one ever took me aside and said, "Okay, all right, look, you that's subconsciously go to where you need to heal and see how it's affecting you in this life." So if I have issues about worthiness and it stems from childhood, from going back into my room regression, where you're healing when you were in your fetus in your mom's belly, which is also like wow, and I'm able to tap into healing from stuff that got on me from my mom that I didn't even realize. And then I'm able to go further back to another life where I've dealt with worthiness issues or abundance issues or lack of money or where I stole something or something where it's affecting me and brought into this life and it's affecting me here. You know, it's like, holy moly, this is amazing. And I can heal that, release that energy, gain my energy back, have soul retrieval of whatever part of me left that was during the trauma, and be able to feel more whole. And I can do that for my children and my husband. I mean, that alone is worth it for me. I mean, me healing is great. I'm all for that, but it makes my life a lot easier with my children and my husband. are happy and at peace, and because then I can like, okay, now I can heal.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's a good point because I, like you say, a lot of your sessions were emergency, like, let me get through this situation, right?
Yeah.
Because of everything that he was going through. So now that you're working deeper with yourself, like what will you tell someone that is thinking about doing the Awakening the Healer? Yeah, I guess that would be the question. What will you say to someone that is thinking about doing the Awakening the Healer? And I'm gonna leave it there so you can.
So I think it's a lot of soul looking into your soul. I don't want to scare anyone off, but I don't want people to. It has to be when you're ready. I've always been under the thing of like the teacher will come when the student is ready. And that is a big part of it because you have to, the only way you can become a healer is if you are healed yourself. I mean, I knew that from Reiki, but that's just like, okay, you have to be attuned in order to be able to do that. And I'm like, okay, I get that, and it's airy fairy type of. And then you hear about shadow work and you're like, oh, okay, though that sounds cool. Maybe, you meditate on it and, but that's not, I don't want to say that's surface level because I'm sure people can go deeper. And there's people that can say they can do it for you. And I've had sessions like that too, but it's not the same. It's honestly, it's not the same because you have to feel it. You have to release. You have to do the work in order to become the healer you were meant to be. And if you have stuff that's lingering and from a past life and it's keeping you from being empowered in this life because that you were maybe burned at the stake or something in Salem and you don't realize that, and so now you're afraid to show your power. It's affecting you now, so you have to be able to go back and say, okay, you know what, let me release that then and let me get back to here. I mean, I've had beautiful sessions with you where I was able, in my Awaken the Healer, where I was able to tap into my great 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 grandfather with shaman, and he was there and he wanted me to step into my power. He said, it's time for you to do that. And I met my ancestral family, and that was beautiful. My grandma, having her there always, and that was amazing. Whenever I do any energetic work, I always see them there. And because I know that they're there. So it's not, when you start second guessing or doubting, because I'm very analytical, so I do that even now. It's knowing that they're there and that you even saw them and that it's not me making it up. So that is like it's very empowering for me because it makes me feel like, okay, you know what? I'm not crazy. Because I was just talking to this today about with my husband. We were talking about, he took a course on last night on, he had this microcurrent machine that's with the Avasia, and it's supposed to help with, I used it on Christian to help with his headaches, and it's supposed to help with also like balancing chakras and different energy levels. And he was like, she said something that was so off the wall to him, and he didn't want to get into it. It was something about putting energy in a bottle and it stays there forever. And he was just like, he said he shut off the camera. He was like, I'm going crazy. I was like, this is crazy. How am I even? And I go, no, you have to take a step back. And with all of this stuff, you have to take a step back and look at it as a big picture and see, okay, remember, we are not of this body. We are of this body, but we choose to come into this body. We're spiritual beings. We know the quantum energy exists. We know it has been scientifically proven. We know this scientific research, as you've explained to us, with all of this stuff on the healing, on spirit attachments, on all these things. We know that there's fact, science-based fact. It's not like in the witch hunt before where people were like, oh, that's crazy stuff. There's scientific proof. So we need to take a step back. And as crazy as all this sounds, we're not alone. We know this is true. And if we're educate ourselves in it, then we will be able to help others, and it won't sound as crazy. You know, our children will be raised knowing this, and it will become more mainstream. It's not going to be some taboo hidden thing because you don't want people to think you're crazy.
Mm-hmm.
And I
Yeah.
think that's a big part of it, is because he sees other people and he's like, well, they're fine and they don't believe in that, or they don't. I go, you don't know what they believe. We don't know other people's processes. You know, people didn't know what I was going through. I was in tears and I'd have to suck it up and go to work and holding all that stuff in, you know, and thinking, okay, what am I going to come home to? Is he going to be there? Is he not going to be there? You know, and I had to suck it up, but people thought I was fine, you know. And now, you know, you know, with my meditation and with doing DRT and doing everything, you know, and with all the knowledge that I've gained with Awakening the Healer program, it's empowering, because now I say, okay, when I'm like choking up here with work, with kids, with school, with everything, you know, I have to take a step back and be like, no, let me push it back. I know what I'm capable of. I know energetically how this world is created, how we can tap into our power. I need to remind myself that and take my power back. And that's a hourly reminder.
When you are an executive and you have to deal with a lot of people and a lot of their expectations, and you have to deal with employees, and then you have to come home to kids and do homework, take the dogs out. I mean, it's a lot.
It's a lot. And
So
when
you have to
everyone looks
become
at
your own
you,
motivator.
oh my gosh, it's, you know, yeah. So you put tools in place, but the program itself is kind of to help you remember that and to help empower you and to give you the tools that you need. So even though I started the program for a different reason, it's the same reason. You know what I mean? It's like it's full circle, you know, it empowered me to remember who I am and that I'm not crazy, because it kind of reminds you like of what we already know, and that there is more people out there that are like that. And people are waking up to it and they're realizing their power, because it just doesn't make sense. I feel like a lot of it is just common sense. Like people are realizing, wait a minute, you know, this traditional traditional things of what we were indoctrinated in when we were children is not reality anymore. There's a big omission, you know. And it's funny because it all started with like The Secret, you know. Like, and but it's true, it was a secret. And that was just tapping into a small little.
Tiny little grain. Now that you mentioned The Secret, I remember because I think you did a program before, maybe like a few months or a couple of weeks before doing the Awakening the Healer.
I've done a lot of
Yes.
programs.
I had no, because I remember the program. I forget the name of the guy. It was like,
Dr. Joe,
was it?
Dr. Joe Dispenza, I went to his week-long retreat, meditation retreat.
How
And
was that?
it was great. I mean, it was nice because you're able to go away and you get into, I mean, we did like 4 hour long meditations, and you go, he's all about going into the quantum and the science behind it. So I love that part of it, but there's no healing component of it. You and I just, it's funny because that's who I listen to now to kind of remind me lately, because I've been going back to that a little bit. And it's funny, I look at it completely different now that I've taken, so it's a different, because he talks about epigenetics and quantum physics and all the science behind everything. And he's all science based, which I like. But his version of the healing comes with meditation and going into the quantum and visualizing and feeling the healing of it. And kind of like QHHT, which you initially were doing, it doesn't go into any of the spirit attachments, the releasements. You know, he in his lectures, he sometimes mentions ETs that he's seen that come up and give him guidance, but I can understand why he can't delve into it, because then that will discredit him.
He will lose, yeah, he will lose so many people and they're gonna think that he's crazy.
Yeah, yeah, and he has thousands of people that go to him. So, but what
I
I
have a lot of clients that come to me after doing his meditation. So it's actually funny because it's like, oh, I did this, but that was just like the beginning point, right?
yeah,
Like you can visualize as much as you want, but if you still have the wounds at the soul level, they need to be released.
yeah.
So that then when you visualize, it can actually happen.
So he talks about tapping into your stories and your emotions of what it is that you're created, because you create the story, 'cause similar, right? We create these stories, and so you have to release them in order to be able to create and manifest, release that energy. So he talks about releasing energy. He talks about letting go of the trauma that you've hold on to for 20 plus years. And but he says it's not going to happen overnight. You have to meditate on it and just and be more present. And the way he releases is if you're present and mindful here, which will
Well,
take 20 years.
it will take 20 years. So, yeah, tell us when you say it will take 20 years, and now that you've seen what we can do in just one session
Mhm.
with the IT.
Well, so it's I respect his work,
Yeah, of
but like
course.
you said, the biggest component that's missing is actually going into it on a subconscious level and having that guidance. Like I wouldn't have healed a lot. And the reason, to be honest with you, the reason why I went back to a lot of his meditations is because, well, shoot, I release a whole bunch of energy. I should be able to get
Let's
right
visualize.
into I should be able to manifest with these now. So I'm experimenting now and see. Well, okay, let me see. Let me see now, because it's
Billionaire.
but that's 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 what I want to find out, because he
Oh,
the
man.
energy releasement, that's what he's about. But in one session with you, when we go and do the work, you're releasing 2, 3, 4 traumatic experiences in your life, maybe past life, maybe parallel life, maybe ET, whatever implant. We're releasing in different levels, where the stuff that you're saying when you're in your subconscious, when you are under, you don't even think is plausible in your reality. And I remember I was second guessing it so many times, and you were like, yes, and you're not that creative. I guess I'm not. But it sounds good. Like,
You will be a Hollywood director.
so it was, so I thought it was fascinating because you're releasing so much more and you're doing the work in that regard. So you have to be able to come back full circle, or it's good to come back full circle, I should say, and be like, okay, I released that. Okay, now let's see what comes up for me next.
Yeah.
And I will say the biggest thing that's been a huge help now is that I can identify triggers for me. Because like you would always tell us, okay, if you're getting angry at something, and if you're pissed off at something and something is really irritating you, then that's a mirror for you to reflect, and that's what you need to work on. And that was huge. Because I heard that back when I was in my 20s, and I took a course on, like, it called Landmark. And it was about the stories we create in our head and how we need to identify those and let them go and live in the present moment and make your decisions based off of now. So that was something I heard back in my 20s, and I was like, oh, that sounds great, and I healed a little, you know, and to hear that now, to release what I need to release and to let go what needs to let go, so I can be more present now and create from here, is great. And that's what all your sessions help me with in the Awakening the Healer program. So it's good.
Anything else you want to share before I mean, it sounds like you did a million courses, so.
Yeah. I forget about them too, because I'm like, oh yeah, that's right, I did that. I've been searching for a long time. And sometimes I would stop, because even from my 20s, I was like, religion just doesn't. I was raised Catholic, like hardcore Catholic. So it never resonated with me. The whole guilt thing, the whole, you're going to go to hell because you had premarital sex. I was like, but that doesn't make sense. And then when I found out about all the priests and all that stuff, I was like, yeah, see, that doesn't make sense. Like, it just none of it. And I'm all about common sense. And none of that resonated with me. So I was searching for a while. And so this kind of makes it come full circle. That's why I was so excited to do the DRT after Awakening the Healer. Once I started it, because I was like, oh, this is really interesting. But I would highly recommend Awakening the Healer because if you're into finding out more about just your spiritual healing, the spiritual world, why you are the way you are, what's affecting you in your life subconsciously that you may not know. Like, people just don't realize, oh, well, this is me. I'm this way, or I'm OCD about something, or gosh, I'm this way about money. Like, for me, it was like, oh, I'm this way about money. I don't know, second guessing. It's for a reason. It's for a reason. So if you're able to tap into what the reason is and release that energy and then heal what needs to be healed there, or if you have some traumatic event, everyone has trauma in their life. Right now, I'm just trying not to scar my children.
With everything you know now, it's like, oh, baby.
Like, how do you not scar your children? At least now, if I do, I can heal them after. Or they have the tools. I'll be like, okay, now you can do it yourself, But that's the biggest thing. I just want to empower them. And with the programs, I feel like it's just empowering yourself, which I appreciate, and I appreciate you because, we wouldn't be here, if it wasn't for you and everything you've done for me and my family. So I don't want to cry.
Well, when you get the ching ching,
I already said
get a
it.
boat and a house, and get me a rich husband too.
There-
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Yesenia, for being with us.
Oh, my
It was,
pleasure. I know I can talk a lot.
it was a pleasure to have you. I think people are going to love hearing your story.
Oh, thank you, Victoria, and thank you for everything. Take the program, people. Become part of the tribe. Wake up.
Wake up.